You can't have what's happening where police officers are getting sick just by walking the beat. I mean, they're getting actually very sick. Where people are getting sick, where the people living there are living in hell too, although some of them have mental problems where they don't even know they're living that way. In fact, perhaps they like living that way. They can't do that. We cannot ruin our cities. And you have people that work in those cities. They work in office buildings, and to get into the building, they have to walk through a scene that nobody would have believed possible 3 years ago. We're looking at it very seriously. We may intercede. We may do something to get that whole thing cleaned up. It's inappropriate. Now, we have to take the people and do something. We have to do something.
Right.
Mark quoted Jesus, "For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you will, you can do good to them." This guidance is within the religious tradition of Christianity. The Old Testament states that the poor will never cease out of the land. Therefore, believers are commanded, and non-believers are advised, to open their hearts and hands to the needy and the poor. I mention this because there is an easy answer to the homelessness crisis that almost all people who have studied the problem agree on. The answer is that we need more housing. Obviously, even an easy answer can be complicated. Homelessness is not a monolithic problem. As a result, it must be approached comprehensively.
And if you go out there and you see some of those people on the street and you talk to them, many of them simply are not capable of taking care of themselves. And, we have to take some responsibility here. Now, generally, it's the responsibility of the locality, of the city, of the municipality to take care of people. But if that's not happening, it devolves to another level. So if the city and the state are not taking care of it, the federal government is obviously going to have to do something.
Broadly speaking, homelessness is commonly the result of one or more causes. First, homelessness is often the result of unemployment, underemployment, or low wages. Second, homelessness can be caused by a physical injury, an illness, or a substantial financial loss. Third, homelessness can be caused by a developmental disorder or by mental illness. Fourth, homelessness can be caused by or aggravated by substance abuse. A recent survey of the homeless by the government of the city of San Francisco found that 26% of homelessness was caused by a job loss, 18% was caused by substance abuse, 13% was caused by an eviction, and 8% was caused by a mental illness, among other causes. Well-meaning and sincere people have worked for decades trying to help the homeless. From these efforts, a general approach has evolved. Essentially, the process is first to get people off the streets and into a shelter, then into a hostel, then into transitional housing, and then finally into an independent home. The biggest hang-up with this approach is that there are not enough independent homes. Despite all of the effort, homelessness is increasing. This is life-threatening to the homeless, who typically live 36 years less than the average life expectancy. This is also life-threatening to public health. Many American cities under Democrat control are filthy, with human feces everywhere and rats and fleas spreading medieval diseases. As a consequence, the time has come to reconsider the current approach entirely. This is no slight on those working in the trenches. This is merely to be pragmatic and intellectually rigorous.
But are you going to keep advocating that we pour money into California without real changes to how they deal with the homeless problem?
Well, of course, that's the definition of craziness, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It's going to be the same result. What we really have to do is get to the root cause of the homelessness situation and deal with it.
The fact of the matter is that homeless people are very expensive. In San Francisco, for example, the city government budgets about $240 million per year on homeless services. Further, there are approximately 8,000 homeless people in San Francisco. This means that the city government budgets about $30,000 per year for each homeless person. This does not include the cost of police activity and the cost of other first responders, the cost of injuries and losses to crime victims, the cost of emergency social services, and the cost of emergency room and hospital care. nor does it include any of the money spent by the state and federal governments. We are spending increasing amounts of money on a problem which is just getting worse. This compels us to look at alternative approaches. Moreover, we know that on average, the cost of a formerly homeless person is reduced by about 60% once we have him or her in a home. Unfortunately, solving the problem is further complicated by politics. Working people are already taxed to death. Selling them the idea that this is a government problem is difficult, to say the least. St. Paul put word to the feeling, "If anyone will not work, let him not eat." The idle are commanded by Jesus to earn their own living. On a related point, the Republicans have very effectively sold much of the public on the gospel of Ronald Reagan, who once said that the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Of course, this was just part of a cynical plan to convince poor people that it is bad to tax rich people. But I digress. The point is that the feeling is entrenched. An alternative approach was tried in Finland. Instead of processing the homeless people through the usual steps of getting off the streets and into a permanent home, they skipped all of that and just put the homeless people in homes. They did this by using existing social housing, buying flats on the private market, and building new apartments. Further, they placed homeless people in homes even if they had problems, such as drug addiction, because they found that it is easier and more cost-effective to treat these problems when the individual is already in a home. This program has been a great success. It has been expensive, but over time, Finland has saved money. In addition, Finland has actually helped a great number of people. Certainly, this program would be untenable in America. Not only would the rich and the working people protest, but there simply is not enough housing. As a result, we should consider a hybrid approach. By this, I suggest that we convert some of our existing social housing into homes, and we make plans to build more low-cost housing. In the meantime, we should address the shortfall in housing with Fema emergency response trailers. We should set aside land for trailer parks, and we should install plumbing and electricity. This would provide housing immediately, and it would ensure proper sanitation. We should also implement some security measures so as to ensure social order. In making this housing available, we must be mindful of the constitutional rights of the homeless. No one must be made to move into such a park, and no one must be prohibited from leaving. In conclusion, the homelessness crisis has an easy answer. However, it is a deceptively easy answer. On the one hand, there are financial, political, and logistical obstacles to providing more housing. On the other hand, the sad fact is that some of the problems in the homeless population are intractable. We do know that housing is the critical variable. We know that getting the homeless into housing reduces overall costs, and it makes it easier to address some of the underlying problems. We know that once people are living indoors, we can provide better and more effective health care, job training, employment outreach, and crisis intervention. Of course, even in the best possible circumstance, no program will be 100% successful. We can only do the best we can, but we should try, and not just for the homeless themselves, but also for us, for the quality of life in our cities, and to satisfy our moral obligations. On the larger point, we have to be honest that much of the current crisis can be traced to wealth inequality. We know that when the middle class is strong and vibrant, we have much less misery and economic desperation. We also know that for decades now, the middle class has been under economic attack. If we leave it to the rich, they will continue draining the economy of its vitality and hope. As a result, we have to decide whether we will govern this country for our own benefit or whether we will allow the rich to continue to dictate to us for their benefit.